Maybe I said the chapter ended in the last podcast, but I had forgotten to include another good example of living laboratories, if you will, or growing regional coalitions into global coalitions. So, Under2 Coalition actually started in Sacramento, California in 2015, I think, with the sister city Baden-Württemberg or something in Germany. And you can see that now it has this is in 2017 from the book, but it keeps growing. So you can see that it covers a lot of the west coast of U.S., Northeast, and Canada, Central South America, Europe, parts of Africa, Asia, and Australia. For those who don't know US very well, there are city and local signatories in the middle here. So US tends to be kind of split on climate actions, but even on accepting climate change along these lines. The Northeast, the Eastern Seaboard, and West Coast tend to be much more open to the idea that we human beings are impacting climate and we need to do something about it. And of course, you have liberal states up here in the Great Lakes area, Wisconsin, Illinois, and I guess Michigan and so on. So the under 2 obviously refers to the 2 degrees centigrade target that we mentioned before. Here is a chart I found about the history. This is from the Carbon Brief. Selected history of the 2 degree C limit. As I had mentioned before, 1975 economist Bill Nordhaus expresses a first intuition that temperature rising by more than 2 degrees above pre-industrial level would take the climate outside the range of observations which have been made over the last several 100,000 years. So he was basically talking about the Vostok ice core and the associated conclusions and the human evolution associated with that, and so on and so forth, right? 1988, Jim Hansen testified to Congress and basically proclaimed that the global warming was here because of greenhouse gases, and there were dangerous climate change impacts to come or already happening. Stockholm Environment Institute suggests that the 2 degrees would be maximum warming policymakers should allow. The Rio Conference in 1992 under the UNF Framework Convention on Climate Change also took the wording prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system as being related to this 2 degree C warming target. 96, European Council. So Europe has gotten very far with this idea of global average temperatures should not exceed 2 degrees above pre-industrial level. Above pre-industrial level, so it's relative to that. As I said before, these are not solidly scientifically justified choices. You can see the evolution there from an economist as an intuition, and then politicians taking it over. It's a nice round number. There are some debates about whether this is a good idea or not, but by the way the impacts and emissions are going, it definitely is something to aim for. Question may be what happens if we exceed, and exceed by how many years? 10 years? 100 years? How much time would you have to come back to 2 degrees centigrade? These sorts of things are not easily done scientifically with the current crop of models, future scenarios, and so on, but it is something that unifies many countries, like the 1997 Kyoto Protocol. George W. Bush abandoned the effort to ratify Kyoto Protocol. Bill Clinton, Al Gore before that again did not push the being signatories because of internal lack of support. Obama didn't push it either in terms of internal ratification. In 2008, US diplomats cut reference to 2 degrees from the G8 summit conclusion. Okay, so it is politically a kind of a hot potato in some countries like the US, and there is Canada and Australia which also don't sign on to these agreements, Russia. Copenhagen Climate Conference of 2009, world leaders failed to agree a deal to prevent temperatures rising more than 2 degrees despite the high expectations. So reality always hits when people have to agree to just limit the temperature, okay, and then come the actions, then come verifications and so on. 2010 Cancun Agreement governments committed to hold the increase in global average temperature below 2 degrees. That's where this history comes from. More recently, even FCC and IPCC have been putting out these sorts of charts. 2 degrees centigrade is now in fact considered too high, so it's now considered better to aim for 1.5, but immediately it's obvious that there is no way we're going to stay under 1.5 unless a miracle happens, because the emissions that are already there, committed warming, as you remember, the emission rates that we are already on that cannot come down anytime soon, and so on. We will exceed 1.5 and even likely 2 degrees centigrade. Again, it's a question of how soon we will exceed them. Nonetheless, looking at the impacts going from 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade global mean temperature, remember this is global mean, it comes with much higher warming in the polar latitudes and some regions of the tropics, for example, which means it comes with much less warming or even cooling in some places like maybe the North Atlantic Ocean and the southeast of US, which are known as the warming holes. Okay, loss of plant species 2 times worse, loss of insect species 3 times worse, further decline in coral reefs up to 29% worse, extreme heat 2.6 times worse, sea ice free summer in the Arctic. This is a situation that maybe will become very bad soon. It's already pretty bad, so it's going to get 10 times worse if we just go up from 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade. Again, there are uncertainties in these, and the danger of course is that we will hit 2 degrees centigrade, and as soon as we hit it there will be skeptics saying, oh look, nothing happened in the Arctic. So it's a question of how long we stay above 2 degrees centigrade and not just get above and then come back. Okay, so there are all kinds of details. Further calculations also done in going from 2 degrees to 4 degrees warming, which may become a reality. So number of people affected go from 189 million to 1.8 billion. Okay, weather extremes, sea level rise, floods, cyclones, hurricanes, everything. 58% of the Bangladesh's vulnerability in food insecurity could increase. So this is the increase in food insecurity in Bangladesh, which would be 88% under 4 degrees centigrade. Ethiopia's vulnerability to food insecurity could increase by 32% under 2 degrees, whereas it would increase by 46% in 4 degree warmer world. And Cambodia's vulnerability in food security and so on. Again, the caveat of course is that this may depend a lot on what happens along with that in terms of the you can see the probability also goes up of reaching those levels of vulnerability in food security. But the question is, what if a game changer comes along that makes like carbon capture and sequestration, some hybrid genetically modified seeds that can tolerate temperature and droughts and so on. So lots of uncertainties, but nonetheless it's good to have an idea of just how much worse things get if warming continues. Coming back to Under2 Coalition, They represent 1.18 billion people already. This number keeps growing. 27.5 trillion in total GDP of the cities, regional governments involved in the coalition. That is 37% of the global economy. And it has 220 plus governments. In their position between national and local governments, states and regions are uniquely placed to take innovative climate action and to influence others to do the same. Influence others to do the same. That's what we are looking for. How to grow the regional coalition into this transformation that we are looking for. 1.3 billion people, so that number has already gone up. Our members include signatories to the Under2 Memorandum of Understanding, as well as national endorsers and other supporters from across the world. It started as Under2 MOU, and now it's become Under2 Coalition. 43% of the global economy. Joining the Under2 Coalition, members commit to achieving the level of emissions reduction necessary to limit global warming to under 2 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. So, the rub there, of course, is that if one group does at local scale something needed to keep the warming below 2 degrees centigrade, but some free riders or some countries which do not comply, which are not worried about 2 degrees C warming or the dangers associated with them, then can we still control the global warming? Okay. Plus, 2 degrees C warming does not mean much at a local scale. For example, we said so many more new species would disappear and so on, but what does it specifically mean for Bangladesh or some part of India or some part of Africa? So 2 degrees centigrade doesn't give a very good picture of what the regional impacts would be in terms of heat waves, extreme events, sea level rise, floods, droughts, health impacts, etc. So nonetheless, it's the action that matters, the coalitions that grow to become living laboratories and to bring about action at a global scale. So we can take any action at this point, keeping in mind that there are uncertainties associated with these targets that are picked.